Bevor ich jetzt an Jayati Ghosh sozusagen weitergebe für ein Abschlussstatement dieser ersten beiden Fragerunden, möchte ich selbst kurz nochmal anmerken, was mir aufgefallen ist in allen Beiträgen. Es geht natürlich ja nicht nur um Ökonomie, Energie, Klima, Landwirtschaft, sondern es geht in allem, was hier gesagt wurde, ja auch um neue Formen des Miteinanders, um Solidarität über Grenzen hinweg oder auch zwischen verschiedenen Sektoren der Gesellschaft und auch um eine Art Empowerment, also wieder Aneignung sozusagen der eigenen Handlungsmacht, das sich dann in verschiedenen Bereichen zeigt. Wir wollen das in der Landwirtschaft, wir wollen das im Bereich Energie. Mir ist, was jetzt ein bisschen vielleicht, dadurch, dass kein Vertreter, keine Vertreterin hier saß, nicht so stark gemacht worden ist, ist natürlich bei diesem Miteinander auch, sage ich mal, die Arbeitskämpfe und die Gewerkschaften oder die betrieblich Organisierten nicht zu vergessen, das könnte man später auch diskutieren, ja auch im Bereich, wenn wir den Ausstieg aus der Kohle fordern, kein konfliktfreies Gebiet ist. Natürlich müssen wir uns auch darum Gedanken machen, wo finden diese Menschen Arbeit und Konzepte in die Richtung entwickeln. Und das andere Thema, finde ich, ist das, was auch ja hier auf dem im Titel des Podiums steht, Flucht und Migration. Also es wurde schon Klimaflucht, Landflucht angesprochen, aber wenn wir jetzt über neues Miteinander, Solidarität sprechen, würde es auch darum gehen, die zu entwickeln gegenüber jenen, die eben keine Rechte haben, die hier zu uns kommen oder die gerade auf dem Mittelmeer versuchen, zu uns zu kommen. Da viele von ihnen zumindest sekundär auch aus Umweltgründen, das heißt aufgrund verdorrender Böden, bewaffneter Konflikte, die aufgrund von Ressourcenkonflikten entstehen, hierher kommen. Also diese beiden Bereiche, sage ich mal, Gewerkschaften, betrieblich Organisierte und Flüchtlinge, Migranten sind natürlich auch diejenigen, die für ein neues Miteinander wichtig wären. Aber jetzt möchte ich an Jayati abgeben für das Abschlussstatement, bevor wir in die Diskussion gehen.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. You know, this has been for me really a very inspiring discussion because, you know, where I come from today in India, activism is under huge threat. NGOs are being targeted, they are being deprived of funding, we are being told, all of us, that we are anti-national if we oppose a particular kind of development. And if we argue that those who are being marginalized, displaced, and are suffering because of this development, that their rights also need to be considered. And in fact, it's very, very important today, more than ever before, to have the international solidarity that I think has been expressed across this panel. So for us, it's hugely important. I think it's really a matter of life and death in large parts of the developing South to know that there is an international solidarity for our cause. It's very important for us, so thank you. You know, I want to pick up on something that my colleague from Germany talked about, that, you know, the worst crime of the G7, in a sense, is imposing this model of development and growth on all of us. And it's not anymore an external imposition. It has been internalized. Our ruling classes across the world believe in this, believe that this is the way to go, this is how to do things, this is the kind of economy to strive for, and everything else can be thrown by the wayside as a result. So we have, in fact, to oppose fundamentally this model, and we have realized across this table that all of us are affected by this model, North and South, and that it is a deeply destructive model, not just in a broad sense of the environment, but in a broad sense of the quality of human life. So it's very important first to attack that model, and I believe that activists in India are being targeted precisely because they are attacking that model. It is the fact that they are able to bring home to some that this is not a model that generates either a better quality of life or economic or social justice or even minimum standards of living for most of the people. I think that bringing that out is what has created such a threat to the ruling classes, that we are being targeted in this way. Now, I want to emphasize, therefore, I want to bring out another angle that we haven't talked about so much, which is the gender angle. And we all know, everybody says it kind of casually without thinking about it, that women are the worst affected by climate change. But in fact, it is true in a sense beyond anything that we can imagine. In countries in the subtropical areas of South Asia, which are drastically affected by climate change now, in terms of huge floods, in terms of inundation, in terms of massive displacement, because rivers are changing course and land is just being lost to water, because the sea is gradually eroding into the lands, and because we are having huge weather changes that affect agriculture, that affect livelihoods of other kinds, we find that the women are the ones who are the most dramatically affected in terms of their lives. And you can't talk about it as quality of life because it is actually much worse. It's actually a destruction of life as you know it. And it's being forced to move in very physically insecure conditions. It's being forced to completely alter the social context in which you live, and being thrown into situations where you do not have the assets or the livelihood opportunities that enable you to survive. Now, therefore, it's very important when we look at all these strategies and of mobilizing to specifically focus on mobilizing women. I want to give you one example from India, which I think is a very, very hopeful example. If I can have just 1 minute, there is a federation of cooperatives in the South Indian state of Kerala. It is called Kutumbashri. And this began, in fact, you know how everybody proposed microcredit for a while. You know, the development industry has different flavors of the month. Now it's conditional cash transfer, but before it was microcredit. In fact, microcredit was promoted everywhere. But in India, in this particular state, because it was being ruled by, in fact, a Marxist government at that time, this state decided to convert this into a strategy for mobilizing women at the micro level through self-help groups, which they then federated and created into a cooperatives. Now, this became a statewide cooperative, this Kutumbashri, and it has proved to be extraordinary in terms of the things it has managed to do. The Kutumbashri has assisted little groups of farming women to become farmers and to focus on food cultivation, because Kerala is a state like Mozambique. We were all encouraged to shift to cash crops. They moved massively to cash crops. They cut down on rice production. Women took little parts of their plots, got together in cooperatives, and started going back to rice production in sustainable forms, using the system, it's called system of rice intensification, which is a much more sustainable, less chemical input using form of agriculture. Women got together and worked out different ways of processing the coconut tree output, using the husks to using the stems to make furniture, using the husks to make different kinds of things, processing the water, processing the cream, processing the oil in different natural ways. And this has actually, because of the fact of a cooperative, it has enabled them to market it in sustainable ways. Women were encouraged to get into sanitation work, which is very important in rural areas especially, and is very ignored across India, sanitation massively ignored. And they were able to do this because they were working as a group in cooperatives, in a spirit of solidarity. I think the Kutumbashri example shows how much you can do if you mobilize women, specifically taking advantage of all the insights that they have collected, taking advantage of the skills that they can bring, and bringing them together to share those skills. And I do believe that in this fight of mitigation and adaptation to climate change, while we are confronting this model of growth, while we are confronting global capital, while we are fighting with the government to change that whole structure of incentives which encourages private capital to actually completely destroy our planet, we must also think of mobilizing at the grassroots, particularly the mobilization of women who can show a really alternative way of how to do things.